According to what they say, and they do it very well, they say that many, many years ago, there was a great drought in the lands where this story occurred. The fields were dry, the trees produced no fruit, and the animals were starving for lack of food. Such a thing had never been seen in those places. For months the sky had been cloudy, but the clouds did not discharge water, only thunder, and more thunder of water, nothing at all. Parikan and his mother lived on a small farm. With all the calamities that were occurring, they had nothing to put in their mouths, all their animals had died, and they only had one cow left that at least gave them milk. The mother, very concerned about the situation they were in and the debts they had, decided to sell the cow so as not to lose the house and the land. She looked for her son and found him flycatcher, asleep in the barn. Surely he is dreaming about him, the mother said to herself. Parikan, stop dreaming, come down from that world in which you live all the time, he told him. We only have this cow left, but we have to sell it to pay the debts. If you go to the market and sell it well, we can pay, and we will have it money to live on until better times come. Parikan was an inveterate dreamer. He always imagined fighting with bandits, rescuing kidnapped innocents, and helping anyone who needed help with his courage. The next morning, before the cock crowed, he left the house with the cow to go to the market. Along the way he told the cow that chewed the cud and chewed the cud the dream he had that same night. You will know, Karamela, because that was the name of the cow, that last night I had a dream that could well be true at any moment. I was very calm in the meadow and I heard some cries for help. Help me, someone help me. I started on my feet and came quickly to the aid of whoever was in need. Upon arrival I saw a beautiful young woman tied to a tree and 6 bandits who had stolen her bag of coins. Ah, scoundrels, I yelled at them, let go of that young woman right now, otherwise you'll be dealing with me. The thieves laughed and came towards me threateningly, and don't believe Karamela that I got a little scared. No sir. One by one I left them on the ground, beaten down by my fists. I let go of the young woman and she fell madly in love with me, I imagine, for my courage and daring. She kissed me passionately and then she couldn't finish telling Karamela her dream because a rather strange man suddenly approached her. Very talkative. I see you, said the man. Parikan was startled. He did not expect to see anyone so early on the roads. I have listened carefully to the story you were telling the cow, and I think you are the person she was looking for. Parikan wrinkled his forehead and raised an eyebrow, meditating on what the man was saying. I've been looking for the right man for a long time to give him what I bring here, he told her, taking a leather bag from his belt. Parikan's curiosity became evident because he instantly opened his eyes looking at the bag that he was showing him. Do you take the cow to graze in a meadow that you know is green? Asked the stranger. No, he answered, I take her to the market to sell her. They will give me good money for her. She produces a lot of milk, she is calm and eats little. What I offer you is worth more than gold. Parikan stopped dead. What can there be in the world that is worth more than gold? The man stopped, opened the bag and asked Parikan to put out his hand. Parikan was half dumbfounded and ridiculous. In his hand a few ordinary broad beans had fallen. No, the mysterious man hastened to say, they are not simple beans, they are magic beans. Magical? Parikan was surprised. Yes, dear friend, sow them in the light of the moon and a bush will grow so tall that climbing up it you will be able to reach the very sky. Parikan's mind immediately began to dream of palaces, gardens, treasures and princesses that would be waiting for him up there. Tell me, young friend, how many adventures can you not find above these clouds that cover our lands? How many treasures? How many princesses and needy people? Parikan dreamed of everything that man explained to him, castles, treasures, princesses, bandits. Aren't these magic beans worth more than the money they could give you for the cow? No, Parikan answered sensibly, my mother asked me to sell the cow well so that we can pay what we owe. I cannot arrive without the necessary money. Money is running out, my friend. Opportunities for immense wealth only come once in a lifetime. Are you going to despise it? Parikan hesitated, looked at the sky, looked at Karamela, looked at the man, daydreamed of rooms full of treasures, and when he realized the man was walking away with the cow and he had the bag with the magic beans in his hand, he was not happy with the exchange he had made. Mysteriously the man and Caramel disappeared. They were out of sight so quickly that he thought hours had passed. he ran to look for them but found nothing but dust, rocks and dryness. It took him a long time to return home, where his mother was anxiously waiting for him, continually peeking out the door to see if she saw him. She arrived when it was already dark. Her mother was very happy when she saw him walk through the door with a bag in her hand. Far from being happy with her sale, Purikin was fearful. He looked at her out of the corner of his eye and didn't say a word. What happened, Purikin? Have you been robbed? Tell me, son, what happens that you bring that wake face? Purikin said nothing, put the bag on the table and waited for his mother to open it and check the contents. The mother approached the table, noticed how little the bag weighed, opened it and spilled its contents. 4 beans fell into her hand in her palm. Whoops, what is this? Son, what have you done? The only thing that Purikin told him was, they are magical. The mother was silent. She looked at him for a long time. Magical? You say they are magical? Will they pay the rent? Will they give us food without us having to work? Purikin, what have you done, my son? How is it possible that you have allowed yourself to be deceived in this way? What will become of us now? Do you realize what you have done? Her mother's character grew little by little, her bad mood, anguish, and despair flooding her as she spoke. She began to cry, and in a fit she took the beans and threw them into the back garden. Go to bed, she yelled angrily, your beans aren't even good for making soup. Go to sleep or I'll slap you. You don't know what you've done. Purikin, go to bed, go away. Purikin went to bed sad, regretful, and very worried to see his mother so sad. From the bed he heard her crying bitterly. He, guilty of what had happened, neither thought nor reasoned nor had arguments to understand why she had made such a change. He didn't know when he fell asleep. His mother didn't know when she fell asleep there on the kitchen table. Neither could hear the whispering noise that was happening in the back garden of the small house. The moonlight that dared to pass through the tangled clouds fell directly on the scrawny beans that the mother had flung in her fury. At the moment that the rays of the moon landed on the beans, a strange rustle occurred in each one of them, and a green twig appeared and quickly stuck into the ground, and instantly leaves and branches began to come out, and the plant grew and grew, and it grew and grew all through the night, rising and rising, piercing the overcast sky to places utterly unknown. When Purikin woke up, it was very early in the morning. His mother was sleeping in the kitchen, and he went out to the patio and was petrified when he saw the huge bush of broad beans that had grown overnight in his backyard. He got dressed as fast as he could and started climbing up the plant. He climbed and climbed and climbed for hours. He could no longer see the ground, and the plant was not finished yet. Where would it take him? Is there something up there, or just sky and only sky? After a good while he verified that the plant was entering a thick layer of clouds, and when he crossed the cloudy massif he was absorbed. The plant had stopped growing right there in that strange place of a sea of clouds. In the distance there was a dilapidated castle full of weeds. Purikin headed towards the place to see what fate had in store for him. The first thing that caught his attention was the immense plants and the enormity of the doors and the stones that made up the walls of the castle. Everything in this strange land was of enormous proportions. He found a gap between the timbers of the huge door and entered through it. An immense room with enormous furniture appeared before Purikin's eyes, an enormous table, enormous chairs, everything was gigantic. It was not for less, because our brave friend was looking wide-eyed at all that, when a grotesque being appeared through one of the corridors of the castle and sat on one of those enormous chairs. He was a giant with wrinkled clothes and badly cut hair. Purikin ran to hide in the first hole that he found. If that being saw him, just by stomping on him he would flatten him. Even with a breath he would fly through the air, and who knows where he would fall. Leaning out very cautiously he listened to the giant's conversation. Let's see, hen, have you laid today's egg? The giant was talking to a small cage that he had on the table. Purikin was also listening to the hen's clo-clo. The cage was of normal size. Purikin thought about how an egg laid by such a small hen could feed such a big man. The giant, content as he could not be, smiled, and took that tiny egg between his fingers, and Purikin was stunned with astonishment. It was a golden egg. The giant did not want the chicken's eggs to eat them, but to keep them in a bag that he had right there. Good little chicken, you have fulfilled another golden egg. Attentive to everything the giant was doing, Purikin was able to verify that on the table was the cage in which he kept the hen, the huge bag in which he kept the golden eggs that the hen laid, and a solid gold harp. The giant amused himself for a long time counting the golden eggs that he had kept in the bag, and when he got tired of doing so, he brushed his huge hand against the harp and it began to play truly marvelous music. Apparently everything in that place was magical, special, and supernatural. The hen laid golden eggs and the harp played alone without the need for a harpist. The music was so sweet that within seconds the giant fell asleep sitting there in the chair. He began to snore loudly, or at least that's what it seemed to Peregrine. His snoring sounded like 100 claps of thunder. Peregrine's curiosity and daring made him come out of his hiding place, and approaching the table and taking advantage of the trellis that he had, it climbed until it reached the top. Upon reaching the top, he had to hold on tightly to a jug from which the giant drank because the sleepyhead's snorting dragged him like a simple fly. As he could, he approached the cage where the hen was locked up, looking at him curiously and continuing with her clo. Peregrine took the cage. He would take that hen that laid golden eggs and he would save his mother from misery. They say that curiosity killed the cat, and well, Peregrine, not happy with the loot he was obtaining, approached the marvelous harp and dedicated himself to observing it. Sensing the stranger's presence, the harp began to speak. Well, it didn't speak, it sang. "Who are you? What do you want?" Peregrine was startled. "Do you speak? Who are you? What do you want? Where am I? What strange place is this above the world? This is the land of the giant Trenton. How beautiful you sing." Peregrine told him, "I'll take you with me. Everything in the castle belongs to the giant, you can't take it with you. The giant is the master of all this? It must be very rich. Tell me, everything in this country is so magical, where then can I find another hen that lays golden eggs that does not belong to the giant? If you want to learn, reading is what you have to do." When the harp sang that, Peregrine realized the huge book that was on the table and where the giant wrote down all his accounts. In that book he wrote down the kingdoms that he visited, the objects that he stole and the benefits that he obtained from his looting. Upon reading all that, he verified that the giant was a thief through and through. He traveled through the kingdoms in that cloud and snatched the wonderful objects he found. Thus he had obtained the hen, the harp and other treasures that with the use and abuse of his greed had deteriorated and kept them abandoned somewhere in the castle when they were useless or their magic had run out. In other words, the giant is to blame for clouding the skies of my country. He prevents the clouds from discharging water and also steals the treasures he finds. He is a thief. The harp this time did not answer Peregrine. It was mute, looking at the giant, and Peregrine, startled, realized that snoring or snorting was no longer heard. Turning, he saw the huge face of the giant staring at him in surprise. He ran like lightning and got right behind the harp. The giant was startled by that and reached out his hand to grab the harp. He was so surprised to see an intruder in his castle that he couldn't get over it. Peregrine ran to the hole through which he had climbed, but not before grabbing the chicken's cage, and began to go down the grating in a hurry. The giant was taken aback. He was so surprised by everything that was happening that he did not know how to respond in time, and he gave Peregrine the opportunity to get down from the table and hide in the hole from where he had observed him. "Ag!" the giant shrieked, "a thief in my castle! How did you get in? How did you come to my domain? I will crush you, I will leave you like a worm." He crouched on the ground and brought his huge face closer to the hole through which Peregrine had escaped. He blew and blew, but the only thing he got was a pile of dust that made him sneeze. He got up and ran to look for a stick to poke around in the hole and make the little man come out. Peregrine meanwhile had found another way out and was in a large room. He ran at full speed and reached the hole in the castle door, and without stopping running he reached the bush of beans through which he had climbed. Determined to go down for it in one sitting, he suddenly remembered the singing harp and decided to go back in search of it. He left the cage with the hen hidden among the leaves of the bean plant and headed back to the castle. On the way, he was astonished to see a staircase that was normal as soon as suddenly enlarged. Immediately he fully understood that this was the ladder that the giant used to descend from his cloudy kingdom and go down to earth to steal whatever magical garments he could find. When he arrived at the castle, he found the giant poking with the stick in the hole through which he had escaped. "Get out of there, little insect," said the giant, and he kept poking with the stick to see if he could find it. Peregrine approached the table and climbing up to the harp. "Shh," he told her very softly, "I am here to rescue you." He took Parikan the harp in his arms and lowered himself with great effort, this time through the lattice work of the table, until he reached the ground. When he got to the bean plant he was tired and sweaty. He grabbed the cage and with cage, hen and harp started down the plant. "Don't forget the giant's ladder," sang the harp. "But," Parikan asked, "and what do I do with her?" "Next to the ladder you will find an axe." He went to where the ladder was, and indeed there was an axe that, just like the ladder, grew and shrank in size. As soon as he took it in his hands, he began to destroy the ladder to prevent the giant from going down it again. He hung the axe from his belt and, returning to where the harp and the cage were, he began to descend again. Meanwhile the giant continued with the stick and blowing. When he got tired of bending over he found that neither the goose that laid the golden eggs nor the magic harp were on the table. He ran enraged towards the stairs and found it destroyed. He saw the bean plant and, huffing and cursing the delinquent who had sneaked into his castle, he began to descend down it, driven by anger. Parikan, meanwhile, had come to his house. When his mother saw him go down the floor, she was very happy and filled him with hugs and kisses. "Take, mother, this will save us from living poorly." They were excited to see each other when they heard the terrible snorts of the giant who was descending through the forest in a hurry. Parikan, taking the axe, began to cut down the plant at full speed, and in a jiffy he pruned it, leaving the trunk clean and limp. And what do you think happened? That the plant, instead of falling, was sucked up to the sky, taking the giant with it. No, the giant could be heard screaming as he returned to his cloudy kingdom, never to come down from it again. Parikan lived with his mother since then in peace and without trouble. The chicken ran around him and laid her golden eggs. The harp made them happy with its music, and what do you think happened? That one fine day Carmela appeared there, ruminating as if she had never left. The rains returned and the fields were once again green and flowery. Since then, and so they tell it, and they do it very well, in that country they have not suffered from droughts again.